Good evening, everyone. Welcome to night 4 of the Torrens University Speaker Series for 2020. My name is David White, and I'm the campus director here at our Rocks campus. And this is home to our business faculty in Sydney. So before we begin this evening, I would like to take a moment to pay respect to all our First Nations elders, both past and present. In particular, we acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians on the land on which we meet tonight. If you're watching at home, we would like to welcome you to be part of this conversation as well. Please email your questions or comments to feedback@laureate.edu.au. These are the kind of events that make Torrens University such a unique place for us to study. And we're so happy to have you join us here tonight, wherever you are in the world. It's going to be a great night, and we're in very good hands this evening. So please, without further ado, I'd like to give you a warm welcome to our host, Tim Gilbert. Thank you very much.
10, David. 10 out of 10, my dear friend. And great to be here again. We've had a really wonderful few weeks, haven't we? And been so diverse over the last few weeks. We began with the Commando and Sam Frost down at Pyrmont, and it's great to see Georgie here, of course, worked with us on that function. Then we went up to the beautiful Blue Mountains and we spoke some really interesting subjects. We approached some really interesting subjects with Jerome from here at Torrens, and of course Bye from the Bush with Grace Brennan. And then last week, the sport, right into my sweet spot obviously, but it was really interesting to hear the stories of those like Joel Thompson, extraordinary yarn. I didn't know the breadth of his story. It was fantastic to see him last week, and Lucy Zellick and Michael Clark. We really did have a cavalcade, and tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have another extraordinary evening. My name is Tim Gilbert, and I'm a very proud ambassador here at Torrens. I was with Channel 9 for 23 years, worked in the media for well over 30 years, started in Goulburn at a radio station earning $12,000 with a car that wouldn't go backwards for 6 months. So it's come a long way forwards from then, but look, I love being here, and I've mentioned it each of the times that I've spoken. One of the real cornerstones of this university, and if you're at home or you're here tonight, is just the way it integrates study into life, into work, and it all threads through beautifully. And for a lot of us older folk, it wasn't the case years ago. So that is wonderful. I do want to say hello to Melissa and Rebecca, who are signing tonight. They've been with us for the past few weeks for the deaf and hard of hearing, so great to have you here tonight. But with no further ado, this man needs little introduction. His travels around the world to find him here in Australia, quite extraordinary. And look, most of you will know him because you would have seen him on the TV many, many times. Todd Sampson. As he comes up, let's have a look at the video. Wow.
Yes.
Great to see you, Todd.
Thank you.
And we're going to talk about that and much, much more. One of the unique things that we have done over the course of the few weeks is had a co-host with us. And today's co-host, of course, studying her MBA here. Okay, a big round of applause for Kylie Clark.
Thanks, Tim.
You'll notice I've rejigged the script a bit. I just thought it'd be nice to you
keep
come
me on
up.
my feet.
No, that's okay. It's all part of it. We even asked Jerome a tough question to start with. But how good is it from your perspective, and I know, Todd, you're a very humble man, to be up here with an individual like this? You just saw a little bit of a snapshot.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you just done half my bucket list there, Todd.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, like my very own version of Up. It was amazing. Yeah.
Now, before we start piecing together Todd's story, tell us a little bit about your studies here at Torrens.
Yeah, absolutely. So I finished high school. Straight out of high school, I went into full-time work, and I never went along the university pathway, and basically worked for close to 20 years. And then my business partner and also one of my best friends, we just decided to have this crazy idea that we would start our own business together. So after 16 years of working at my organisation, I essentially quit my job, and then we went into business, just two women. As a startup, we run an event tech and event management consultancy. And then we'd been kind of on that journey for 16 months, and we were looking for kind of like a group to kind of belong to and be involved in, and that's when we discovered, or I discovered, I went along to a event run online by Businesswomen Australia and met the lovely Lynn Hawkins. And just after attending that one event, I was like, this is our group. Like we found our people, just really genuine and just an amazing network of women. And then that's when I found out that through TUA and Businesswomen Australia, they were offering a 100% scholarship to study at the university. And so I'd always been thinking about doing some kind of tertiary education, and I'd toyed with the idea of doing an MBA. And so then I decided, you know what, I feel like the universe has spoken, this is the opportunity, and I applied for the scholarship with a view to study an MBA. And I was lucky enough to be the recipient of that application, and that opportunity. So just finishing my first trimester, so wrapping up doing business environment and marketing. And it's been just, the most amazing experience.
Can we give Kylie a round of applause for that?
Thank you.
And I can see why you got it, because that presentation, just to be sitting up here and to be able to present like that is just wonderful. So congratulations and all the best with the rest of your education. What was your education story?
Yeah, that's a bit of a long story. I grew up in Canada, in Cape Breton Island, which is a northern island with not a lot of people, and neither of my parents went to school, had any education. My mum worked as a checkout girl at KFC, and my dad as a Coca-Cola factory worker. He poured sugar into vats. So his job for 30 years of his life was bear hugging sugar and lifting it into vats. So I saw education as an escape. And I started hiding in libraries and studying. And I went from the bottom of the class to, I actually enjoy being in the bottom of the class much better than I did towards the top end of the class.
Less expectations?
Less expectations and just more interesting people. And then I went into the top of the class, and then eventually I ended up doing an MBA. And that was a twisted journey in my life.
How much did the work that your parents put in, and hard work to give you food on the table, how much did that inspire you to say, well, I just want to take this a step further? Like you said, that education came to you hiding in the corner of libraries, but how much were you driven by that?
Well, it was complicated. And it's fair to say that our beginnings don't necessarily define our ends. So my mom had an addiction problem. And my dad, like me, was very good at hiding from those problems. So when I was that age, my best friend and I were at McDonald's, We used to always hang out at McDonald's back at those times, Gary. And we dropped him off at his house. He walked up to his front step, opened the door, and his brother shot him dead with a shotgun off the deck of his house. His brother had got in a fight, and drugs were really popular when I was growing up, and his brother had got in a fight with someone, and that person said that they were going to come back and kill him. So he loaded up the gun, sat in the doorway, and waited for that guy to come. Unfortunately, it was his brother. And Gary's death and my mother's addiction completely changed my life. So I became inward. I turned to study academics. Even as a small child, I just thought learning was an escape, so I just wanted to learn everything. And I also turned to climbing. I became addicted to height, hiding at height. And I used to climb all the time as a child. I had a rock quarry across from my house, and I used to hide. I used to climb, scale up, and hide. And that seed eventually, let's see if this works, that seed eventually took me here to the summit of Mount Everest when I was in my 20s. So yes, some things in the beginning, some of those seeds stayed with me, and I evolved them over time. And some of those seeds are still the insecurities and the instability that you get from, I wouldn't say troubled, but from a challenging childhood.
You've made doing the impossible a day job. It's often said, find something that you love and get a job in that space and you'll never work a day of your life.
Yeah, kind of. I didn't.
Have I sugarcoated that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't start out that way. I was driven by money in the beginning, and it's probably the reason that 80% of people do MBAs, but I was driven by money, not because I wanted money, is that I didn't want to be poor. I didn't want to have the life that my parents had. So I was driven by money, and I ended up, I had a massive life change again. Another person, let's see if this works. Yes. In 1994, Nelson Mandela was elected back into power in South Africa. And I decided I didn't know what to do with my life. I studied a liberal degree. One of the things I love about Canada, Canadian education system, is unlike I find the Australian system narrows people too quickly. And one thing, we just had this discussion, one thing I'm 100% certain of is we never really know what we want to become. It's an evolving thing. And if an education system forces us to do this, well, then that's going to be a conflict point. And that's why the majority of people on MBAs are either confused engineers or money-hungry people. And I didn't know what to do. I had a liberal arts degree. I loved science, but I didn't have the confidence to do science as a degree. And economics I love, which was the majority of my degree. And so what do you do when you don't know what to do? You do an MBA. So I looked around the world and I thought, I'm going to do the MBA for life change. So I looked around and I thought, where in the globe would I want to be to do an MBA? And that was the year Mandela got into power. And I applied to their Graduate School of Business, which is in Cape Town. Cape Town is arguably, I know for the Sydney Siders here, you're going to cringe at me, arguably the most beautiful city in the world. Minus the danger, but the most beautiful city in the world. And I moved to Cape Town. And that was everything I'd ever thought it would be. You know, the saying of once you have the dust of Africa in your shoes, you'll never get it out. The MBA was an extraordinary program with a pretty good mix of interesting, eclectic mix of people. I was 25 years old, so I was 10 years younger than the youngest person on the course. And I still didn't know what to do. And I rebelled against the MBA. I didn't, all this sort of teaching me how to manipulate other people using processes and systems didn't sit well with me at that stage. And I spent most of my time pushing back from the MBA until my marketing lecturer fell down and broke her back. And as a result, she got a guest lecturer to come in and lecture on her behalf. And the guest lecturer was a creative director from an advertising agency. And he spoke for 45 minutes about creativity and imagination and how we could apply our lateral thinking to solve problems for companies and for organizations and for charities. And I immediately just went, that's what I want to do. I was going to go to McKinsey's. I had a job at McKinsey's in New York, and he spoke. His name was Robin. I went down, took my tie off, and then went down to where he was at the bottom of the stage area, and I walked up to Robin, so excited, thinking he just blew my mind, and I said to him, I want to get into this business. How do I do it? And he just looked at me quietly and said, good fucking luck with that. And that was the beginning of my advertising career. Yeah. So I did that for a long time. I did advertising for a very long time.
And did very well at it. It's interesting you giving it a little bit of a snapshot of the individuals that were at uni and that sliding door moment with that fill-in lecturer. What about the people that you met in that journey, and how much did they grow you as a person, or how much did you grow as you met people? Oh gosh, I've never met a person like that before. I'm speaking from my own experience because I went to a single Catholic boys' school and I went to uni and I met this whole broad church of human beings which I'd never been exposed to.
Yeah. The MBA didn't do that for me. The school I went to before that, which I just skipped over, was called Pearson College. It's a United World College of the Pacific. 200 students from around the planet are chosen to attend this school from 160 countries. No one can pay. Everyone has to get in on full rounded scholarships. Every room we were in, there was 4 people in a room, each person from a different continent. We only studied until 11 o'clock in the days, and we then did extracurricular work all in the afternoons. We had no exams. It was a baccalaureate program, that part of it. It was a baccalaureate program. I had no exams until 2 years were finished. That experience completely changed me from a small farm town boy in Canada filled with insecurities and not knowing what to do in life, and I was thrust into this diverse, smart people, everyone. That changed me from an education perspective. The MBA, I met some really interesting people on that course, but it pales in comparison to the influences those other people had from around the world on me. The MBA was more the environment that changed me, living in a revolution in South Africa. I mean, South Africa, it is a 88% black and completely controlled by a 6% minority of white and in transition. It's an incredible place. It's an incredible place to live. And I'd always wanted to live in a revolution. So less the people, more the environment changed me.
Yeah, unbelievable. And where you were at that time, that World Cup that went on, the whole peeling back, the drawing back of the curtains on a country with an individual like Nelson Mandela. You got a couple of questions, my dear friend.
Yeah, so you joined Leo Burnett and did very well working your way up to become CEO there. Can you tell us a bit about that and how that led you to appearing on Gruen?
So when I entered the advertising business, so again, I had an MBA. So, you know, that thing, how do you know someone has an MBA? They'll tell you. So I had an MBA and I went to 10 agencies and they all said, interesting, but not certain what to do with you, because in some ways you're more qualified from an education perspective, because advertising people are generally, not always, but they're underqualified, overpaid. I was overqualified, and that was a problem for a lot of people. And also, if you're a CEO and someone walks in with an MBA, a young person who really with drive, it's intimidating. So you could imagine the MBA could work against you. So I then got accepted into a company that took me in, and they said, okay, what do you want to do? All they wanted was the MBA. All they wanted me to do was to show up in a boardroom with the head of Procter & Gamble or the head of Coke and say I have an MBA, and then have a conversation with them on a level of which they might relate, and then steal the business. And that was my job. And then, so I had an option. You either go into the creative side of the business, which was my natural inclination, or the strategy side of the business. They're basically, not only, but there are 3 sides of the advertising business. Creative, account management, the people who make it happen, the creative, the people who often do the ideas, and strategy, the people who navigate the ship. They put them over the water so they can fish, the creatives. And I thought with an MBA I should do that, strategy. And I worked hard in trying to be the best. And if someone said to me, what was your calling card during your career? Why did you end up being successful? I was a creative MBA. And that was very unique 20 years ago. In the advertising industry, there were very, very few people with MBAs. So I used it as a positioning, like I did my clients. I used it for me as a positioning. And I moved up. And I moved up to the number 2 at Leo Burnett. I was number 2. And number 2 is the best job. Because you act like number 1 until shit hits the fan, and then you're number 2.
Number 2, yeah.
So I was number 2 until one day. I was leaving the office, 7 o'clock at night, and right at the doorway as you leave Leo Burnett, there are pods. And I heard a woman crying in the pod. So I went into the pod and I said to her, she was just hands in her face, just tears strolling down. I said to her, are you okay? What happened? And she looked at me and she said, you should know, things are not good around here. And that was it. I then got in my car, didn't turn on the radio for distraction or calming down, drove straight home. I grabbed my phone, and Naomi, my wife, was like, are you okay? And I walked with my phone straight through out the other side of my house. I called the regional CEO of Leo Burnett, and I said, I'm taking over as the CEO. And she said, what? Well, we have a CEO. I said, no, that one's going to be fired, and then I'm taking over as the CEO. And she said, Todd, calm down. We can't just do it like that. And I said, well, that's what needs to happen. 2 days later, we fired that CEO, who was lovely and incompetent and was costing 260 people their jobs. And I joined that I reorganized that company around one compass. One, some would say ethical, I saw it more as a corporate compass. One compass I used for 15 years. I said the same thing in every meeting. I said the same thing. I held everyone's KPIs. I wrote all their KPIs to this compass. People, product, and profit, in that order. And I'll never forget when I presented that the first time to the global CEO in Chicago. He leaned back in the chair and he said, Todd, that's really interesting. Can we just change the order of the P's? And that was my guiding principle. And then sliding doors. I show up at the office and Danny, my PA, says, Todd, you got a message from Andrew Denton. Can you call him back? And I ignored it and said, I'll call him back. And Danny, being an excellent PA, brought it into me and said, you need to call him now. So I don't get through to Andrew. I get through to his PA. And she says, he would like to have a meeting with you. Are you willing to have the meeting? And I said, sure. And they came into my office. And they sat down, 2 people, John Casimir and Andrew Denton. And they said, look, we have this idea. And we want to make a television show about it. And basically, it is unpicking and unraveling the advertising industry. Now, he's sitting in my office in an advertising agency that I had spent 10 years building with 260 people. And I looked at him and I said, what do you mean by unpicking? And he said, well, sort of exposing it. And I said, no way. I can't do that. I can't be on a show that's taking the piss out of advertising while I take income from advertisers. And he said, oh, okay. And they left. And then I got a phone call saying, okay, if you don't want to join the show, can you help us with a workshop? And workshop is our specialty. You know, I'm like, okay, I'll do a workshop. It's 10 o'clock in the morning at the ABC. Okay. So I show up at the ABC at 10 o'clock, and Will Anderson is there. And I'm like, oh, okay. Hi, Will. Never met him before, don't know. And Andrew comes out, he's a little guy, you know, he puts his hand on my back, and he says, Todd, the workshop is in this room. Come on in. I walk into the room. There are 6 cameras. There's 10 people sitting down. There's 4 people at a desk that I don't even know, and Will Anderson is now sitting in the middle. I sit down, and they said, okay, rolling. And I turned to the producer beside me, and I said, rolling what? And they said, oh, just go with it. And we spent the next hour discussing periods, pads, tampons. And after that was over, I got a phone call saying, we would really like you to be on this show. You're going to be working with a person, you may know him, called Russell Howcroft. And I said, I have no idea who that guy is. And they said, I think you'll like him. And that was the beginning. And that moment completely changed my life again. Because that opened a door that I had never considered. I had no ambition ever to be on television. It was like I'm a closet wannabe scientist. I do not want to be, I'm an introvert, and television was not something that I was ever considering. And Andrew and the ABC just opened that door, and that just changed my life again in a different direction.
That's amazing. And I guess your the time that you spent on Gruen, you spent really close to your advertising roots. So how did that evolve into shows like Redesign My Brain, Life on the Line, and Body Hack?
So, Tim, you'll find this funny. I realized I don't sweat on television. So you've got a fucking career.
I must be doing it for you.
You're good. I remember Andrew said to me, look, we got to bring you in just to check on the lights. I mean, and it's like, literally some people.
Isn't it amazing when you see someone that does?
Some people. Yeah. So those that have watched Gruen, if you are, I don't know if you are Gruen fans, or if you are Gruen fans out there, if you are, you might remember Dan Gregory. And Dan Gregory was the bigger guy. He used to say, I'm the fat guy from Gruen that's quite funny. And he was. All of those things. He was brilliant, funny, and he used to sit beside me on Gruen. And he's a sweater. He sweats. And one day I'm doing the show, and I'm like, wow, my groin is really cold. Like, I am shivering. I'm from Canada, and I'm shivering going, I'm so cold. I look down. They had put a fan shooting up to cool Dan down. But Dan, in his excitement of telling his stories, kicked the fan, and that was blowing straight up to my groin. So when I realized I could be on television, not that I necessarily wanted to, the show became a success. It started taking on this sort of strange cult status. It's hard to believe. Gruen has been ABC's #1 hit show for 12 years. We didn't know, we thought we'd get one season. We thought Andrew Denton said to me, one season, enjoy yourself. That's basically what he thought we were going to get. And once I realized that I could articulate on television, and that I could explain complex subjects on television, and that people didn't hate me, although there is a large group that probably do. They got this Russell, love me, hate my t-shirt, whatever. But when Andrew said I'm probably at 70-30. He said, you're probably at 70-30, maybe 60-40. 60 like you, 40 hate you, so you're a hit. So when I realized that I was okay on television, I then changed my mindset. And I said, okay, I'm going to use my voice now. I'm going to make something, because I had carried a lot of guilt into Gruen. If you follow the show, you know that. And in fact, Gruen eventually ended my career in advertising. But I had carried a lot of guilt. And I then said, I'm going to do something of value. Not worthy, hopefully, but of value. I'm going to try to do something that's, if people are going to watch me, I'm going to use the platform. And so there was an idea that was, someone had floated by me called Redesign My Brain. The premise was really simple. For over 70 years, science told us our brain was fixed. This program was going to visually demonstrate plasticity. And we're going to do it. And then I read a bit about it and read it a bit at the beginning of the script. And I said, okay, if I can co-write and I can make it adventurous and attract young people that would never want to watch a brain plasticity documentary, then I'm up for it. And I spent 5 years doing Redesign My Brain. And it was a documentary of the year. It was a massive hit on Discovery Channel in America. And it just brought science. It combined my two passions, adventure and science, and brought it to a young generation of people. I then was almost finished that series, and I started writing another series. I was still working at this stage full time. I wrote another series, which is premise was there are extraordinary people in the world, extraordinary cultures and individuals and people in the world. I'm going to go visit them, jump into their world, and try and decipher what they do that makes them unique. So whether it's as you saw in the video, whether it's freedom fighters in Gaza or the Iraq War in Mosul or the Siberian reindeer hunters, or I went to 19 countries in 5 years with some of the most extraordinary people on the planet. And that's how Body Hack, don't like the name, that's how Body Hack came about.
It's really interesting how you used people at the top in advertising. And when you look at some of your finest work, and what a body of work, like you opened up a whole new world and you ran at it, it involved people. It's right there, isn't it? It's
yes.
right at the cornerstone of
yes.
who you are.
Yes.
Humanity.
Yes, and I also realized I am much more comfortable with oddities. I find myself much more at ease with people that live at the edge. And I believe that we can learn a lot from those living at the edge. And I believe by understanding each other, we learn about ourselves. And that's kind of the premise of the show. It's gotten me into some really bad, hard situations and near-death situations and things. But sometimes when you're telling a story that you think is worthwhile, you put aside the fear that you're feeling.
It's been an interesting year, hasn't it? Because we've it's always been a natural thing to want to give someone a hug or talk to someone, but we've been told we can't do that, you've got to stay away. There's been a real challenge globally. It's been turned upside down. How have you gone through the whole COVID period? And I know it still exists. We're being very fortunate here in Australia.
Yeah, it was an odd beginning for me. So I was in Rio de Janeiro, in a favela, which are the kind of slums of Rio, with a former axe murderer who carried an axe on his shoulder and enforced his thing with an axe. And I was filming samba. I was doing samba in the favela with an axe murderer, and COVID broke. And when we were walking around the favela, and they're tightly knit areas, they're basically tightly knit for many reasons. They're poor areas, but they're tightly knit to stop police from being able to ram them, get up there. So they hide the drugs high up, streets are really winding, and it's basically run by their own legal organization that they have there. And because we were foreign, they referred to us as COVID. And at one stage, that axe guy turned to me and said, I think you should leave the favela now and never come back. And that's what we did. And DFAT contacted us the next day and said, if you don't get out of the country now, you'll be there for 6 months. We flew out on the last flight, and I went into quarantine for 2 weeks in Australia. And that was the beginning of my whole COVID experience. That episode never got made. So that episode is in a can somewhere, but never got made. And for me, COVID, because I am an introvert by nature, but COVID made me miss being around people for the first time. And I don't go out, I don't go to bars, I don't go to pubs, I don't go to public things. I'm at home with my girls, with Coco and Jed and my wife and grandma. But I kind of got really sick of those guys all the time. And I really wanted to be with someone else. And I realized that even though I do consider myself to be an introvert, COVID has taught me that I need a bit more.
Yeah, I think we're all, Zoom's been a wonderful tool. I think everyone's a little bit sick of Zoom as well. Now for a show like Body Hack, talk us through the creative process, because a lot of television doesn't have creative process. This show definitely does.
Yes. So the premise of Body Hack, as I explained, extraordinary cultures around the world, and then jump in. And my way of understanding cultures is to try and walk in their shoes. Sometimes those shoes are not comfortable, but try and walk in their shoes. So I still have it. I carry around a list on my phone of cultures and societies that I'm interested in. And they could be they could be fringe, like bodybuilders, or they could be the Matsi tribe in Peru. I carry a list. So that the first step is I need to find something I'm genuinely interested in. And then if I find that, and when I find that, I normally, for a series, I was doing 6 episodes, and that was too much. I was never with my kids. And so I brought it down to 3. So I would then get 6, and I'd give it to my researcher and say, okay, could we have a look at these cultures? And let's just see if there's a story to tell. Are there some science that's interesting? You know, like the Matsis use a poisonous frog, and so then they do another round of checking to say, is there something here? They come back to me and show me the research, and they say, geez, this tribe looks great. Or these Siberian guys deal with minus 60 for time on end. It'd be really interesting to see how their bodies adapt. Then that's our first filter. And then we go, so I like it, there's something there, and then we try to find a fixer. Fixers are the holy grail of all filmmaking. Fixers for movies, for everything. The fixer makes the film. And a fixer is basically a local person who can get you access to everything. In Gaza, that was a little bit of a tricky situation. And by the way, she was a female fixer. She was extraordinary. And the risk for her was unbelievably high. And she was by my side the entire time, except we ended up with Islamic Jihad. They wanted to see me and talk to me. And Islamic Jihad is considered one of the biggest scariest terrorist organizations in the world. And I'd always been with Amira by ourselves. I've never seen any of Amira's family. And that night, we had to go at 12 o'clock in a darkened vehicle, blindfolded. And that was the first time I met Amira's husband. She brought him along for this one. And I knew it was going to be bad if she brought her husband along. And that was another one of the most, blindfolded, driven around with guns. And then I got out of the vehicle, and Amira was beside me. And I said, Amira, the last thing she said to me before we left the vehicle is, be careful with what you say. That's not fucking helpful. I'm like, I don't know what thing I need to be careful about, because I'm here to ask them questions. And then I could tell when she was translating that she was not translating exactly what I was saying. And he was responding, and as time went by, and all I could see was his eyes and the guns, and as time went by, he was like yelling in my face, and I'm looking at Amira thinking, is this proper translation, or what's happening here? He'd be yelling at me, he'd be like, saying these things to me, and she would say, yes, he believes in fairness, and he wants, like, whoa. Yeah, but so sometimes the journeys took me in the strangest places, but fixers make everything happen in films, and without the fixers, there would be nothing.
In some parts of the world, you just have to have fixers, and yeah, you can't even walk out of a hotel if you don't have one. Do we have a little bit of action, I think?
Oh, okay. Wait, let me just set the scene for this. I think this is coming, but we'll double check. So, Redesign My Brain. So for people that are watching, some people they often ask me, is there a mental skill after 5 years of, traveling around the world with the best brain scientists and learning what they know at that time and having everything experimented on me? What did you learn from that? Or what are some of the things that you think are important for people in the future? Well, one skill is mental flexibility. I would argue that mental flexibility, also known as creativity, is one of the most important skills. Because almost everything else, as you know, can be done by a computer and an algorithm, except better than we could. So mental flexibility or creativity is an incredibly important skill. And I believe it's a differentiator for the future for everyone, in every business, regardless of what it is. If it's a university, if it's an advertising agency, if it's farming, creativity is a huge separator. So mental flexibility. So the exercise, now remember, I'm creating visual metaphors for it so that young people will want to watch a show about the brain. So here's the exercise for mental flexibility. I'm going to fly to the Utah desert and climb a 120-meter vertical rock face without ever having seen it before, and I'm going to do it blindfolded. And what we were testing in this was how quickly does the brain adapt. How flexible is the brain when deprived of one of its senses? Now, I was working with this really well. I was at Harvard at that time. And they were doing all these studies on me, and they were saying, and they knew about what we were doing, and the specialist said to me, don't worry. Your brain is going to adapt to no sight. In maybe 2 or 3 hours, you'll be completely fine. 5.5 hours of whacking my head on overhangs, trying to get up onto that edge. It was not a fun experience, but this is the experience.
I know my brain can convince my body to give more. I've just got to make it happen.
Well, there's nothing there.
Nice. Way to go.
This feels high now. This feels high now.
Good job. Well, I have some news for you.
Okay, good news?
You don't really probably want to take the blindfold off now.
I don't want to. Okay.
I recommend you keep it on.
Okay.
I've got to take a look.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow, my... Oh. Wow, my legs are shaking. This is high. Wow, that's even higher.
And this is where I have to get, across the sidewalk.
Just so you know, I've taken a lot of people in this tower. I would say maybe 50% of the people don't want to cross the sidewalk.
Okay.
I've seen maybe 1 or 2 people that have walked. So if you start walking and you don't feel comfortable, you want to sit down.
Holy crap. Oh, I don't know.
I'm exhausted, frightened, and without sight. I need my mind to be flexible and remember my training.
Instead of shutting down and doing nothing, look for possibilities and try something.
Okay. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Holy crap, it's not flat.
No, it's not really.
Well, oh, wow, that's good information. Oh. Oh, wow.
Good job.
Holy oh, wow, this is scary.
Just for your information, there's a gap in front of you, okay?
And it's a jump, isn't it?
No, you do not have to jump.
What am I meant to do?
The best thing for you to do right now would be to sit down.
I'm gonna give it a jump. Oh.
Good job.
Oh, I almost had a heart attack.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, that was the closest I've ever come to a heart attack. I didn't know where the landing was.
I think you should do a show about decision-making skills instead of adaptability.
Steph might have a point,
Oh, yeah.
but the summit is within reach.
Oh. Oh.
Climbing is not always glamorous.
Oh. Yes. Do you know what?
Well done.
I'm really happy I couldn't see that part.
Grab those knots. Oh, no. Yeah, there you go. Grab that. Walk your feet right.
How's the height?
The height's fine. That's the giant foot. And now there's a lot of stuff to grab and a lot of feet.
Oh, there's...
Nice.
This is the top.
That's the top.
Okay. Holy. Wow. I want to have a look. Wow. That is amazing.
Great job, Todd. See you later.
Oh! Oh my God! Oh.
Hey, stop!
Steph? How do I get down from here? Steph? Steph!
Wow.
I think all of us here and everyone watching at home almost need a defibrillator and did our ACL just watching. The pictures are breathtaking. The whole piece of TV captivating. The thing that I wanted to touch on was getting back to that people again, because everything you did was amazing, but what really lifted it to that next level was the ability of, Steph?
Steph, yeah.
Yeah.
How good is it to walk around and find other great talent? She was just a natural, what do they call it, TV talent?
Yeah, she's natural TV talent, but she's an extraordinary person. Both of her ex-husbands dead. One from wing jumping, they jumped together. He went right, she went left. He hit the cliff, died there. Her other husband died doing what I ended up doing, except between a canyon, and wire walked and slacklined, and it broke, and he fell to his death. Steph was an incredible talent, but she had a deadening about her emotions, which scared me because I saw it in myself. Growing up with an amazing, beautiful, and troubled mother, you learn to compartmentalize really well. And I just want to make a comment about fear and bravery. Steph is amazing, and athletes are amazing at compartmentalizing. They can take fear, they can package it up, and they can put it in a little box and close that door on that box. And that can lead to problems in your life. And it's been a challenge for me. And I am a fearful person, but I've learned to manage my fear. And the best advice I ever got, any Kiwis here? Any Kiwis out there? Anyone know any New Zealanders? Anyone like New Zealanders? 2 weeks before I went to climb Mount Everest, I was in New Zealand for work. I was working I was the agency for the Australian Tourism Commission, and New Zealand is our largest client. I was with Leo Burnett. I wasn't on television. I didn't know anyone. I had no profile. Social media didn't really exist. Zero. And I had arrived in Auckland for this meeting, and I was in a cab, and I was speaking to the cab driver about climbing. And he said his son was a climber, and we talked about climbing, and I talked about Everest, and he said, "Oh, you know Edmund Hillary lives here, right?" And I said, "Oh, I knew he's a Kiwi. I didn't know he lived in Auckland." So we pull up at the Hilton, and I go into my room, and I think to myself, I wonder if Edmund Hillary is in the phone book. And in true Kiwi fashion, in bold, Sir Edmund Hillary. So I phoned him, and his wife, June, answered the phone, and I nervously said, thinking, you know, how audacious it is to call one of the most famous people on the planet in the white pages. So I said, "Can I speak with Sir Ed?" And I heard her over the muzzled phone yelling, "Ed, Ed, there's a climber on the phone. He wants to have a word with you." Suddenly, this deep voice gets on the phone, and we speak for a few minutes about my upcoming climb, which is 2 weeks away. And then it might have been 2 or 3 minutes, and then he suddenly says, "If you'd like to pop around for tea, I'm going to be here for the next 3 hours." So I hang up the phone, I call the Australian Tourism Agency, and I said, "Look, do you mind if I don't come in because Sir Edmund Hillary's invited me?" They're like, "Never mind us, just go see him." I get in the cab, I give the address to the cab driver. The cab driver goes, "Do you know that's Sir Edmund Hillary's house?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Can I wait out in front?" And I was like, "No, mate, there's enough stalking going on here." I then ring the doorbell, and June comes to the door. By the way, I walked the block twice, just talking to myself, saying, "You're going to be okay, it's okay, you know, what are you going to ask him?" And then I went to press, June comes to the door, and she goes, "Oh, Todd, Ed's in the kitchen." She puts her hand on my shoulder. She walks me in, and there he is, my lifelong hero. When I was in that library as a small child, I used to read about him. I used to read Hiding from the World, and I used to read about his adventures and his beekeeping, and he seemed like such a lovely, down-to-earth adventurer. And so I sat there with him, and June said, "Would you like some tea?" And I said, "Sure." And she just put the tea down, put some milk, cracked open some biscuits, slapped me on the back, and walked away. And it was beautifully, beautifully ordinary. And we talked for nearly an hour, and he gave me some excellent advice on bravery. He said, "Todd, bravery is a learned skill. Bravery is a learned skill." He said, "You only need to be brave when everybody else is panicking." And he said, "They're going to be panicking on Everest." And that advice, that notion that bravery is not something we are born with. Some have it. They're also known as psychopaths because they don't feel it. Bravery is feeling it. Bravery is, I am now afraid, and I'm going to do something. Not feeling fear and doing something, that's not brave. That's generally psychopaths. And that advice stuck with me. And whenever I see that, I always feel like I need to put a caveat on that to say to people, I am not a uniquely brave person. I've learned through techniques, through skill, through time, through emotional awareness to manage my fear. I'm certainly not without it.
You had a very good day job. You must have been pretty happy with moments like that you'd actually walked away from that conventional day job. Your conventional day job, which is exciting for most human beings, and I'll get another question from the other Kylie Clark. I won't even ask you about how many times. Are you really Kylie Clark?
Yeah, it's worked in my favour.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so Todd,
Leaving my day job?
Yeah.
Well, I was too scared. I felt like I was in two left shoes. I loved being in the advertising business. It's filled with eclectic, smart, diverse, creative people, still disproportionately run by men, but creative people solving so many complex problems. Earth Hour was my favorite, best achievement that we'd ever done. But I felt like I had two left shoes on. Like it just wasn't fitting for me. And my way of blocking out the harm that advertising was causing was to try and be an excellent CEO, to lead people. I could have been in any company. I didn't need to be I could have been in any company. I was just concentrated on being the people, product, profit, trying to create a really good company. But I still felt uncomfortable. And TV was paralleling. So, and they were symbiotic because the company was doing better because I was also on TV, but I was drifting away as a TV person and starting to make films and documentaries. And so I was starting to kind of move. But I was too scared because I grew up, as you know now, that I grew up in a blue-collar family where my dad got up at 5:30 in the morning, worked until 6:30 at night, came home, ate meat, often bologna, and then went to bed. And that's his life for 50 years until he can't walk anymore. And then you do something else, mostly sit around. But that was what I thought I had to do. So I used my MBA. I used my experience. And I was asked, and I joined two boards. I joined the board of Fairfax, and I'm currently sitting on the board of Qantas. That allowed me to parallel my exit out of corporate life as a CEO, because I had 2 feet, well, roughly half a foot in corporate life, so I could contribute, but I could pull myself out. And then that was my transition out of every day-to-day work.
And I guess from there, what's like being on TV? What is the kind of best and worst things you've had to do?
Well, that's one of the best experiences because I was so scared to do it, and I felt good doing it.
I thought I was brave by taking my shirt off on the Today Show. You look at what you've done.
That was brave.
Particularly when you look like this.
But the worst was in the Amazon. So I'm in the Amazon with a tribe that had only, turns out to be cannibals, that had only been discovered 50 years ago. So there's many tribes in the Amazon that have never been discovered. They only get them in flyovers. They often see spheres and they've never made contact. This tribe only 50 years ago, Matses, beautiful people, really small, like remarkably small. Like you walk up and you're like, oh, wow, you're really small. And I remember when I first arrived, so we had flown small planes because we had 15 bags of gear. Small planes, large planes, small planes, boats, small boats, canoes. And then we arrive at this tribe's location, and they're on a hill, big hill, mud hill. And the tribe family came down to meet me. So I have no idea what's about to happen for the next umpteen days living with them. And I kind of climb out of the boat and I go up. I knew a word to say to them, which to say hello. I always try to do something to break it a little bit. And I'll never forget it. Grandma was there. And if you saw that film, she was probably in her 80s. And her hairdo was amazing. She had like this bobbed gray hair with a fringe. And she's like 80 and she had her face was painted red eyes. And she had whiskers coming out like this from her nose. She looked amazing. But the thing that freaked me out was she was breastfeeding a monkey. And I'm like, hi, and I didn't know would I lean in or stay back or, it was pre-COVID times. I didn't know what I was like, hi or hi. And I said the monkey, and it's all on camera. I go, the monkey. And the chief goes, yeah, titty monkey. I'm like, oh, God. Anyway, so I went to this tribe because scientists in America have been studying a frog in this tribe. You probably heard about Cambo, and they call it kate. And this frog, they believe, has certain peptides and enzymes that could potentially cure a lot of mental illness, a lot of degenerative diseases, and they're thinking about it for cancer. It's just remarkable. So that's why I'm there, to experience what they do. Fuck, that was such a bad idea. So then I get to know them, and we're hunting a lot together, and they eat sloths. They love sloths, right? So before everyone freaks, sustainable living, man. They kill, they eat, So they want to go hunting for sloth, and they want me to do a kate, the poison. And so in the spirit of joining, their world, I go, okay. And the crew is like, no. And of course my insurance was like, no. So then it's nighttime. It's 3 days in, nighttime. And I hear this coming from the blackness. They have no electricity, no running water, nothing. We're in the middle of nowhere, right? We traveled 3 days to them and found out later they're cannibals. So we were just hanging on there. And then we heard this calling, and then the chief comes running to me where I'm staying, and he starts calling back. And I'm like, okay, who's he talking to? And then he gets our flashlight, crew flashlight, and he goes into the jungle. I follow him, and there's 2 frogs. One is brightly red, brightly green frog, and sort of dark frog. And I get the translator. He grabs frog, he hands it to me. And I'm like, you got a frog on a stick. And he says to the translator, he wants the bright green one because it's female, and the female's poison is much stronger. So then, next day, we put 4 little stakes in the ground, and we stretched the frog like the frog is in free fall. And we tie the little frog legs to the end of the stakes. So the frog's lying like this. And then I have to rub the frog's legs gently. And then as I rub that green frog's legs, she sweats. And she sweats a white poison. He then takes the poison. He scoops the poison while I'm rubbing her legs. And I don't speak frog, but it looked like she was going okay there. I mean, she was just looking around. And then they take it and they put it in a container. It's all on camera being filmed. And then the chief starts spitting in the container like this. And then he mixes it up, and then he pulls a stick out of the fire. Oh, then he releases, she releases the frog gently. They take the frog and they put the frog back on the thing. And then he takes a stick out of the fire and he burns 3 holes in my arm, because that's how they ingest, right? No needles, obviously. So their way of ingesting is through skin, the poison. So I'm camera crews, and they're all looking at me, and everyone's red and sweating and freaking out, and I'm sitting there with the chief, and he get the stick out, and because he had spit in it, my sound guy goes, stop, everyone stop filming. And I'm like, oh, what did he see? And he said, Todd, I just need to warn you, you can get Hep B from that. And I'm looking at him going, you're worried about Hep B? What he's just about? I said, I'm fine, Richard, thank you. So he then burns 3 holes in my arm, and then he puts the poison in. That was single-handedly the worst experience of my life. So it starts where I'm like, wow, I feel really like, whoa. And then my lips just go boom, swollen. And then it feels like millions of red ants are burning up, and it's just coming through. It starts here, and it's just like coming through my body. And then the doctor, who had been brought up from a village, who is actually a medically trained doctor, it's pretty funny because it's on camera, and he comes out and he goes, let me check your heart rate. And I'm going, whoa. And I'm totally tripping out, but physiologically going down. He goes, my resting heart rate's 52. He goes, my heart rate was 170 just from that. So then the doctor says, we have to inject him with steroids because he's going to die. And I'm going, and I'm out of it, and I'm saying, and my crew is, my director's going, this is fucking great, keep filming. And my rest of my crew is like, no, stop. And I'm just slumped over like this. And then I heard him say my heart rate, and I said, check my heart rate again. It went down to 36. So out comes the doctor with the needle, and I had enough wherewithal to know, because the chief was totally calm. He was looking at everyone, and in his interview, he's like, I don't know why the white people are freaking out. and I'm just slumped over I'm sitting on a stump, and he comes out with the needle, and I said, no more drugs. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. And everyone's arguing. And then I think I'm going to pass out. And suddenly I start to be, not all right, but I could start to see better. The burning wasn't making my eyes bad. And then I just felt, after 20 minutes, I just felt this incredible sense of, I'm so exhausted, I need to sleep. So I go to bed. The doctor's sitting beside me thinking, this guy's dead, I don't want to be here on my watch. And he's sitting there with me, and he's like holding my wrist, and I'm asleep, and he's checking my pulse. And then, I don't know how long it was. He says it was an hour and a half. It felt like 2 days. I wake up, and the chief is standing in the doorway with a spear. And he's like, we go hunting now. Because this is what the drug does. This is why they take it. They take it for hunting. So, I don't eat meat. I haven't eaten meat, except on television. I've eaten raw reindeer, monkeys, everything, because in tribes. But in my normal life, I don't eat meat. I haven't eaten meat for 30 years. On television, I do, but...
Television's not real.
Yeah, exactly, but it's unfortunately real. So I go hunting in the blackness of the Amazon, surrounded by jaguars, with a spear in my hand, totally comatose from the drug I've been taking, in a line with my crew behind me going, what the fuck are we doing here? Following the chief who is trying to get sloth. They haven't found sloth for 3 days. I'm walking, and then I couldn't believe it. It was like karma. And something flickers in my eye. And without holding myself back with the response, I say out loud, sloth. And it is a poor sloth. I had spotted the sloth. And then they all come up, and they're like praying to me because the kate changed me and transformed me into a sloth finder, and I'm now the hunter and everything. And then I got to get the sloth. And the sloth moves like this. It's like evolution has said, fuck you, sloth. Like, I was going, please escape. And he's the... But his claws are razor sharp, right? So I don't want to grab him. I'm not great. It looked like a little Ewok. I'm like, I'm not grabbing that thing. I am not grabbing that thing. And the other guy goes, I'll get him. You know, he's yelling, and he grabs him, and the sloth shoots and slices his hand wide open. He's bleeding everywhere. And then they tie the sloth with one little tie, and they leave it on the path because we're actually going to get something else. And I'm like, you're just going to leave it? He doesn't move because it's moving like this. So then we get this, we go away, we come back, and the poor sloth's only moved like 3 feet the whole time. I'm like, oh, please, evolution. So he's just moving like this. And then we get him, and they kill the sloth with a stick, and then they reverse his head. So his ass, he's like a backpack. So they reverse his head. So his ass and his head are together, and they put the backpack on me, and then they carry it back, and then we boil it, skin it, and then we eat it for breakfast. It was one of the most disgusting things. So that experience was one of the worst experiences of my life. Look, don't eat sloth.
Wow.
What a journey. What a life, you know. From in the corner of that library, I've interviewed a lot of people over 30 years. It's a fascinating night, and I think everyone here and at home is seeing that here, Todd. What about HSC students right now? They've been through, you and I are old enough to sort of have seen a few things, not a pandemic, but they've had their whole world turn upside down. What's your commentary? What's your tonic?
I've got two young daughters.
Well, you know.
So, but I love Australia. I'm a proud Australian. I've been here 25 years. I love this country. I've chosen to be here. But I hate the education system. I hate HSC. I hate that whole thing of people having breakdowns, and you know, it all comes down to this one exam, and I find that whole system so silly because it's not the way life should be. And all these students that are struggling and stressed and for this one exam, and I wish them well, but I will say, you're not your marks. I know plenty of people that have failed out of school that have succeeded in life. There's no direct correlation. In fact, those of you that know, there's potentially an inverse correlation. If you went back and statistically tracked the highest, I know some of them because they're my friends, they are the worst introverts, unhappy, unsuccessful, unbelievably smart people that I know. You're not your marks. And I did send a tweet out that went completely gangbusters, and CNN picked it up, and I didn't mean it like that. I just was saying this to the HSC students in the tweet, and the tweet was really simple. I've been a CEO for 10 years. I've hired hundreds of people. I've literally hired over time between 3 companies. I've hired hundreds of people. Not once ever in any of my hiring did I ever ask for someone's HSC score. In fact, I have never asked ever for anyone's scores in any exams that they've ever taken. But I've asked every single person that I've hired pretty much the same thing. What have you done in your life that you're proud of? What have you done to help other people? And what have you failed at? And if I was giving advice, please do well on HSC, because that is the system. So beat the system you're working within. But believe me, it is not, A does not lead to B. You know, it's not a direct correlation. And you can succeed in many other areas, and the pressure is extraordinary. And if you see that in the spirit of what it is, then you can do your best. But we're not our marks. And if that was the case with me, when I was failing out of school as a kid, before I knew that education was a key, was a way of me seeing my life and experiencing the world, then I would definitely be a remarkable failure, because I was at the bottom of the bottom in my school. And I went to the top by choice and effort and energy. But I know I wasn't defined when I was sitting at the bottom.
We could talk all night. There's 1,000 questions we could ask, but we can't. I want to ask one more question, and David's going to take some questions from the audience and from those online. The question that I want to ask is in this same area of how important it is to love your mistakes, how important it is to love your errors, how important it is to love your failures and turn them into something that doesn't land you on your ass, so to speak, and have you never get up again.
Yeah, it's very important. But it's one of those theoretical notions that's you're only able to comprehend in retrospect, because failure in the moment is failure, you know, and it's often not real failure because it's a projection that you're putting onto yourself. But I have lived my life with a fear of failure. I got it from my parents. I don't blame them. It was because, as you know, some of the challenges that we have as kids become things that are very, very useful as adults. And they gave me so many skills that worked in my life, in my corporate life, in my life. But I've always had a fear of failing. And I think I always believed that I still think I'm gonna end up like my parents were. Like even today, I still feel that way. I go through moments where I think it's all gonna come away from me, and it's all gonna, you know, I'm gonna be back at ground zero. But I don't let it overrun me anymore. I'm aware of it. I'm aware that that's how I think. I'm aware that that's faulty thinking. And for those that are into therapy, I had to do therapy, by the way, I recommend it anyway, but I had to do it for a body hack to get cleared for insurance. I had to do it in between each episode. Imagine the poor therapist. So you just came back from Palestine. How was that? She's like, oh, she needed therapy from the therapy sessions.
She was laying on the couch.
She's like, oh no, what's this guy? He's in the Iraq War, now what? And she's like traumatized. But anyway, from a therapy perspective, I do recommend cognitive behavioral therapy. You can download the app. It's just an awareness. It's just an awareness of your faulty thinking. And I have fear of failure, which is a faulty thinking, you know, fear of catastrophe, faulty thinking. So everyone has faulty thinking, but when you're aware of it, it makes it much easier to deal with your day-to-day life. So when I fall, and I've fallen more than I've succeeded. I failed more than I've succeeded. But in my mind, I think I've stitched together my successes in a way that I don't really dwell on my failures anymore. But I've had a lot of them. And I've made tons of mistakes on the journey, but I've become aware that sometimes I just get triggered with my fears, you know, and being aware of that helps me deal with it.
And it's a great answer, and it's so interesting in television as well, that you can turn some of those things that go wrong into the best moments, can't you, either in live TV or scripted TV,
Yes.
or any parts of, you know, theatre, so to speak.
I mean, it is ironic. We were having this discussion before that the television industry is, not everyone, is filled with a whole bunch of often introverts. Like you see, Tim, you see all these guys on TV and they're big personalities and they're all, but most of the time, a lot of them are just, they're introverts playing in an extrovert world. And because they're smart, they're able to, like people like Paul McDermott, and I mean, they're just so incredibly talented people, but they're just incredibly introverted. Like if you meet them in real life, Andrew Denton, you'd be like, wow, they're really, first of all, you'll go, man, they're short. And then you'll go, wow, they're really introverted. So television is a bizarre, for me, it's a bizarre world to be in because it's the opposite of what an introvert would do, which I think is maybe why I like it.
Yeah, and so many people come to me, gosh, you look so much bigger on television. I said, thank you. No mirrors at your place. David, you look wonderful all the time. And over to you, my dear friend. It's your audience, it's your crowd.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we'll open it up to the audience first. We've got some great questions here, but is anyone here with some questions? All right, we've got Kerry, who's our head of student experience.
Hi, Todd. My question is one of, you know, when you were trekking your career, and when, oh, by the way, fellow Canadian, hello.
Good
nice,
people.
Nice day, eh?
Yeah.
Ice hockey fans.
Good people, good passport to have.
But I was curious, when it was almost like a serendipitous journey for you, and you sort of happened into quite a few things, and obviously you had the talent to be there. But when you were talking about acquiring positions on boards, that's a tough transition for a lot of people. What are the recommendations you would make for someone who's aspiring to a position like that as sort of the next phase of a career?
So I've been on the Qantas board now for 7 years. And it's been an amazing experience. And Qantas is, I'm not going to make this an ad for Qantas, but with Alan Joyce running Qantas, it's a very diverse, it's a very well-run, diverse business where you know, Alan works very hard in getting eclectic minds around problems, even in the boardroom. And the boardrooms, not all boardrooms, but historically have been for a lot of retirement places for a lot of people. You know, you're successful in business and you go, that's not our board, definitely not our board, but some boards are like that. That is all changing. And I think more and more boards will be looking for, again, eclectic mix of skills beyond pure simple accountancy and finance or former management consultants. They'll be looking for diverse skills in all areas, in marketing, in digital, in customer. And the way to get onto boards is to do something worth talking about yourself. So a lot of people want to be on boards. They're going to bring you in for your experience. They're going to bring you in for what extra you add to that. And to add that extra, you will, I believe, have to have done something worth talking about. And that can be in environment, sustainability, or that could be, but if you imagine, they have wide choice of skills in the market that they can get. So many people trying for so few jobs. So you need to be unique in what you're bringing to that board. And I think it's going to be a whole generational change of boards now in Australia. There's going to be massive, massive change coming over the next, especially with digital. The number one concern on the majority of boards in this country is cybersecurity. And you know, if you're dealing with a whole bunch of people that are generations out of this, you know, that are not, have never been on Instagram, you need these people in boardrooms. You need these people talking to you, you know, about what's happening for real on the ground. And that's the change that's going to happen in this country, especially around digital in the boardrooms. But I would say don't make it, I know some people, I know there are professional people that's mainly what they do is boards, but I think boards benefit from people. I know that I'd like to think the major reason is I successfully run a communication company for nearly 10 years. And I brought completely different skills. I brought digital skills, I brought marketing skills, I brought customer skills. I didn't come from, it's handy that I had an MBA as well, but I didn't come from finance, accountancy, or management consulting.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna come across here, sorry. All right, Lisa Walsh from our Piermont campus.
Hi, Todd. I need to ask about your T-shirt. So on that, I'm hoping what you're going to say is the monk who trained you in archery recently, or it was on recently. I was at a year 6 camp with my son, so it was a parent and child camp. Yes, it was hard work. But during it, one of the activities was archery, and I spoke about your experience, and we breathed it out and concentrated, and I don't think I got red, but I got the next closest. And we had the year 6s, and then we were speaking with the instructor about it. So is that where your T-shirt is from?
No, it's not. But that is an excellent reason to wear this T-shirt. So I did archery in Japan. That was one of the last films that I did, horseback archery, with this incredible woman. She was 6 foot tall, and she's the one and only female champion archer, school owner in Japan, in a very male-dominated society and a very male-dominated sport. And she was remarkable. And you can fall off a horse, and so you got to be on the horse in a full gallop, in a full outfit, which was pretty funny, and aiming an arrow. And the way the Japanese do everything is every single movement is choreographed, everything you got. And meanwhile, you're cruising on the horse is not listening, and then you're trying to aim at these targets, and then you're firing. But you do raise something I want to strongly recommend to, before Tim wraps me, because I would kick myself if I walked away and didn't talk about. You guys probably know about the Dunedin study. The Dunedin study, Dunedin is a small place in New Zealand. It's one of the, I think, 4 or maybe 5 longitudinal studies, human longitudinal studies on the planet. It's one of the best in New Zealand, Dunedin. And they've been studying everyone in the Dunedin community for 42 years now, I think it is, or 41 years. So it's a longitudinal study. They asked many questions in this study. And one of the questions they asked, there was a documentary on the plane about it, on Qantas plane about it. They said, is there a defining characteristic in children that would almost give you a beeline, a straight line to success? So statistically relevant characteristic in children that almost guarantees success. Well, the study looks at many things, and it eliminated a lot of things. It's not to do with base IQ. It's not to do with how rich your parents are. It's not to do with the private school you went to. It comes down to one teachable, learnable skill: emotional regulation. Those that are able to regulate their emotions statistically are more successful than those that are not able to do it. Arguably the best tool on the planet for emotional regulation, and I encourage everyone, young, old, kids, I started with my girls when they were lying on my stomach. I encourage everyone to do it. It is a technique used by the majority of athletes at the top of their game. The best of the best people will do some form of meditation. From a science perspective, meditation has nothing to do with religion. Although it is interesting that the Buddhists figured it out 2,500 years ago, but just park that. It's to do with breath. And breath is the bridge between your nervous system. And you have the ability, I have the ability, and my daughter at 10 can do this. She can bring her heart rate from full slamming heart rate down to calm with, in her case, maybe 15 breaths. Breath is incredibly, incredibly powerful. If I was giving a recommendation to everyone, young and old, is to do some form of meditation. And I recommend downloading, I used Headspace, or there's Calm is another one. I don't endorse anything. I make no money from any external products. So both of those are really good apps. Calm is the one I specifically use. And you can use a guided meditation, no religion involved, breath control. So I strongly recommend everything that I've done on that film. Pretty much all those smart scientists, people from around the world have told me meditation. Right before I do anything really serious, really hardcore, centering meditation, except for the frog. there was no meditation there.
I don't think the book's been written yet. Kylie, look, you regulated your emotions wonderfully at the start of the night when I went off script and got Todd up here, and I could see you looking at me, and I thought, and I'd read your email, you're very organised. You said, what's this guy done? And you stayed very calm. But the question I want to ask you, what has been tonight, because it's a different space for you, what has been that moment? What has been that answer? What has been that thing?
Yeah, I can't move past the sloth story. I just have to that's something I just need to kind of park and kind of unpack later on.
You and my kids both.
Yeah. But the thing I really kind of stuck in my mind from all your wonderful stories and everything that you've spoken about tonight is really people, product, profit. Like, it's so simple, and yet it just means so much and can mean so much. And I think for myself and doing my MBA and, looking at, you need to look at your business's strategy and what does that mean, and your competitors and kind of how do you make a profit. It really all starts with the people. And I think every single story and everything you've spoken about tonight is around people, as in yourself and your experience from a child and the people you've met on the way and how people have kind of shifted and molded, to where you are today. And I think that's so important. And then the people is what drives the product, and then the product is what drives the profit. And I think that's such a great takeaway. And when you're sitting there and trying to unpack and determine, how do we move forward, those three key elements are really the crux and the ethos of what you should be doing.
Well said, Kylie.
Wait, Kylie, you just sparked something in my mind. So meditation, but you are so articulate and able to kind of come off the cuff. It does remind me that another skill, which you know because you're very good at it, and that's what's got you, is presentation skills.
Oh, thank
now,
you.
I know a lot of people hate it. I hate it.
What do they say? The two great fears are death by fire and public speaking.
Public speaking, just like any other skill, is a learnable skill. And you just need to practice. And it's exposure therapy. And each time you do it and you don't die, you get a little bit better and better and better and better. And if another recommendation I would give to especially young, I'm sure you would agree with me, is hone your presentation skills. Make an effort to make that a skill that you are amazing at.
Yeah.
Because I promise you that one alone can get you a lot of places.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a background in musical theatre as well, and I think just putting yourself on stage and wearing makeup and looking silly and dancing and singing, I think that pretty much sets you up.
Have you got a song? No, you're pushing my luck.
You will have to take your shirt off.
That'd be unfortunate.
This is turning very different.
Because Pippin's about to debut next week. Of course, it's great to have theatre back, of course, after the year.
Yeah.
Next week we'll be heading down to the wonderful city of Melbourne, which is great because we can get across the border, past Wodonga for a speaker series doubleheader. First up, we'll be looking at the future of work with the incredible Future Crunch. Kylie, you're going to be there, so we look forward to that. And that is next Wednesday evening. The following night, an Australian icon, he's a great guy too. Dylan Alcott, of course, achieved so much in the world of sport and other things. So that's all next week. But Todd, because we have mentioned the word people so much, because it was the top of the list when you told the big boss to sack your boss, why people? And can we finish with that tonight? It's been a fantastic conversation. Why people?
Why?
Why people? Why, in your words?
I think that firstly, we're all here, and we're all connected to each other in some way. And I'll just go back to the premise of Body Hack. By understanding others, we can better understand ourselves. And I think that if we keep that in mind, then I think we can learn a lot from each other, and that can have a snowball effect. And I would just say to young people that are beginning that don't put the pressure on yourself to know the end. The only thing I would recommend is whatever you do that extremely well. If you're sweeping the floors at McDonald's, sweep the floors so well that people go, holy shit, he's really good at sweeping the floors. And I promise you, another door will open. And I just worry of a generation that stands looking at doors, demanding them to open. So You don't have to do everything well. You don't need to know. I don't know what the end goal is for me. You don't know. It's constantly evolving and changing. But I do know this. Whatever you're doing at this moment, do it so well that other people notice how well you're doing it. And I promise you, another door will open. And then if you do that one really, really well, another door will open. But standing looking at doors, they tend not to open.
Todd Sampson, thanks and good night.